What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg on the YouTube.com. Down there, we like magic. So much so, in fact, that we've combed through every single Aether Revolt card, all the mechanics, and all the strategies to bring you what I believe, at least, is going to be one of the most in-depth pre-release guides that you could possibly come across here on the YouTube. Well, in this video, we're going to go over what you can expect to get when you sit down at your Aether Revolt pre-release, and some basic strategies for the sealed deck format, and the best commons and uncommons in every color. We're going to grade all of the colors, and talk about some archetypes in this format. So we got a lot of information to relay to you. Let's go ahead and hit you with it. So if this is your very first pre-release, what should you expect? Well, you'll go in, you'll pay the shopkeep your money, you'll sit down at the table, and then eventually all the pre-release packs will be passed out to you and your buddies. Then, when you open them, what you will get is 4 Aether Revolt packs, you'll get 2 packs of Kaladesh, you'll get 1 premium foil, mythic or rare, any mythic or rare from Aether Revolt. So if you pull a mythic, good on you, you're a lucky person. And then you will also get 1 D20, that's a 20-sided spin down life counter. You'll get about 30 minutes, this varies with the shop, but it's usually half an hour to open all your packs, look through your cards, and build a deck. You don't have to bring lands, the shop will have those for you. You'll have that 30 minutes to build a 40-card deck, and for newer players or people that have never attended a pre-release or done a sealed event, that can seem like a daunting task. Build a whole 40-card deck in 30 minutes? Well, that's not going to be so hard, especially since you've watched this pre-release video, and I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple of tips on the sealed format that will be the same in just about every sealed format you'll ever play. Now, the sealed format is slow and will usually depend on large board states. Biggest board state often wins in sealed, and games will go fairly long as players try to establish board states and get out of board stalls. So with that in mind, there's a couple of cards that you need to prioritize over anything else. First of all, removal. If a card gets another card off of the battlefield, it's very likely that you'd like to play that card. Removal is a very important aspect of any limited play, be that draft or sealed. You'll also want to prioritize getting large creatures or bomby creatures with big splashy effects. Those can end the game in a hurry, and they have big numbers on them. You want to prioritize that. But you also want to prioritize a full curve, except for 1-drop in sealed. We're not too worried about 1-drop creatures in sealed, but we do want a nice full curve of good 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and 5-drop creatures. You want to play anywhere between 12 and 16 or 17 creatures and fill the rest with spells. So you want to prioritize creatures because, again, biggest board states wins. But you also have to have some removal in your deck. That'll usually be a lot of your spells, depending on what you've drafted. The prevailing wisdom is to play anywhere between 16 and 18 lands in sealed, and most players end up playing 17. But if you've got somehow a very aggro deck in sealed, you'll play 16, and if you've got a deck with a lot of expensive creatures or spells, then you'll play 18. But usually, you want to stick to 17, especially if you're only in 2 colors. A special tip for the Aether Revolt format is that it's okay to not have as many creatures as long as you're playing artifacts. And you want to prioritize artifact creatures because they are both artifacts and creatures and will synergize with things like improvise or any other effects that require there to be artifacts out. Alright, so that's what you can expect to get in your pre-release pack, and a couple of tips about the sealed format in general. But now, it's time to go over some of these colors. As a matter of fact, all of these colors and the artifacts. So buckle in, we're going to come over a bunch of different cards real quick. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about a couple of different cycles here. First of all, there are 10 uncommon gold cards in this set, and they are all very, very powerful, although I'm not really sure that any of these would put me in these 2 colors just by opening it in my first pack. I don't know about that, but they are all very powerful if you're already playing that color combination. The only 2 that might sway me into a color combination are Maverick Thopterist and Spire Patrol. I think these are probably the 2 best of all of these uncommons right here. But there are other good ones. Rogue Refiner is fantastic, and Renegade Rallier is very good as well. So all of these are very playable, and so if you find any of them and you're in that color combination, feel free to go ahead and play those. Another thing is these 5 mythics right here. Now, you're not going to be opening a whole lot of mythics, obviously, and there's not a whole lot of mythics in this set. But all 5 of these mythics right here are fantastic, especially Aetherwind Basker and Herald of Anguish. These are both incredible cards, although Exquisite Archangel can win the game and keep you from losing it. And Mechanized Production isn't even that bad if you're copying a good artifact every turn, especially if you get a Gear Hulk out of one of your Kaladesh packs, so remember that. But Herald of Anguish and Aetherwind Basker are both game-ending, ridiculous cards. If you get either one of those, it could easily put you into that color. Another note about the rares real quick before I go on to the commons and uncommons in each color is that if you get any of the expertises, these are all also very playable. The red one may be in some ways the worst, but it's still quite playable. But the blue, white, and black ones are absolutely crazy, and you want to play those every time you open them. And finally, as far as the rares, I won't talk too much about rares today, but I do want to point out a couple more rare cycles. There are 2 5-mana enchantments, one's green and one's white, and these look very, very good specifically in the sealed environment, to me at least, as far as breaking open stalemates and getting more board presence as the game goes on. So be on the lookout for those, and also be on the lookout for either Quicksmith, the blue one, or the red one, because just like the 2 enchantments, they're very good in board stalls. One can help you draw cards to get out of that board stall, and one can just deal damage to the face to help you get out of that board stall. Both very good. Alright, we're just going to go over the best commons and uncommons in each color as we move through here, and then grade the colors as we go on. So let's start in order here with white. I think that white is a fairly strong color in this format, and I'm going to go ahead and point out the best uncommons, of which I think there are a good 5 here. First of all, Restoration Specialist and Deadeye Harpooner. Deadeye Harpooner is just a good creature because any assassin type creature, a body that can take out another body, always very, very good. And this one looks a little bit tough. One of your opponent's creatures has to be tapped, and you have to get the revolt off. But still absolutely worth it. And in sealed, your opponent and you will do a fair amount of attacking, so it shouldn't be too hard to find a tapped creature, and it won't be too hard to get revolt off. Now, Restoration Specialist can get you card advantage. It's 1 card for 2 cards, and in this case, it's on a stick. The fact that this is on a body is great for the sealed environment. You want to play creatures, but you also want these recursive elements, because in games that revolve around board states and removal, something that can get things back is just always desirable. So Restoration Specialist is an all-star uncommon. There are 3 more white uncommons I want to look at. Those are Thopter Arrest, Airdrop Aeronauts, and Deft Dismissal. Thopter Arrest is just straight up removal. It's fantastic in this format because it takes out either a creature or an artifact, and those are the 2 things we're most worried about. So play Thopter Arrest when you pick it up. Airdrop Aeronauts is a big white flying creature, and you want to play those every time you get them. This one actually has extra stuff about it. Even if it was just a 5-mana 4-power flyer, you would play it. But in this case, there's gravy on top. And Deft Dismissal is removal, and in this case, it can sometimes be a 2 or even 3 for 1, but not very often. But you are looking to get at least 1 creature off of this, and if you get 2, then you've just 2 for 1 them, and that is ridiculous in sealed. As far as white commons go, there are 5 of those I want to point out too. Caught in the Brights and Decommission are both decent removal in this format. Decommission you might not want to play in the main deck of your sealed deck, but is a great sideboard piece, and remember that any card that you didn't use in your main deck is in your sideboard in the sealed environment. So you can always put this in game 2 or 3 if you need to. And Decommission is one of the only things in this format that can actually destroy both artifacts and enchantments, so you want to play that. At least in the sideboard, remember that you have it. And Caught in the Brights is straight up removal. That's basically an arrest effect. It's like a pacifism, you know, and those are also always good because it's more or less removal. The other 3 I want to talk about are Dawn Feather Eagle, Countless Gears Renegade, and Alley Evasion. Alley Evasion isn't incredible, but it is a decent 23rd card. It can save your guys from removal, it can activate Revolt, that's pretty cool, and it can even give your creature a boost in combat at instant speed to help it overcome a creature that it's blocking or that's blocking it. So at least keep Alley Evasion in mind as a 22 or 23rd pick if you end up getting it in your pool. Dawn Feather Eagle is just unbelievable at the common level. That's just crazy. We like big flyers. We love big flyers in sealed, and a 5-mana 3/3 flyer is a decent stat line by itself, but one that can buff all of your guys when it comes into play is just crazy. You want to play a couple of copies of this if you can. And then Countless Gears Renegade is just decent value. It's a 2-mana 2/2 that can make a 3rd power for you and split that up and put another creature on the board. All of that is great, and you want to play as many copies of these as you get. Overall, white has decent removal and a bunch of solid creatures, which is what you can usually depend on white to do. I feel like there are 3 good support colors in this format, white not being one of them. I think white is a pretty dominant color because this is a very removal light format from what I can tell. There's not a whole lot of premium removal that we're looking at, but white has a couple of pieces. Mostly Thopter Arrest and Caught in the Brights, and Death Dismissal is going to be an important piece of removal too. It's also got solid creatures and at least halfway decent rares, so white looks like a pretty good color to me. I'd give it a B+. But moving on here, how do we feel about blue in this format? Well, blue also has a number of good cards. Let me go over the uncommons real quick. There are also 5 blue uncommons that I want to take a look at. The first of which are Windkin Raiders and Efficient Construction. Windkin Raiders is just an absolute slam dunk of a card. It's a big blue flyer that you can get out for cheaper than its actual mana cost, although you'd probably be happy just paying 6 for this. So if you can get into play for 4 or 5, you've done a good job. It's a big blue flyer. That's what you'll want. So Windkin Raiders is a great card and maybe one of the best blue uncommons, as a matter of fact. Efficient Construction, by another token, could be a great card in draft. If a draft player wants to build around this card, I'm fairly certain that they're going to be able to. But in sealed, you'll still be able to get some value out of it. I feel like if you play enough artifacts, you should be able to get 3 or 4 Thopters out of this over the course of the game. And those will help with improvise. They'll fly over. 1/1 flyers are just good in sealed. The other uncommons that catch my eye are Shielded Aether Thief, Skyship Plunderer, and Reverse Engineer. Aether Thief is great because it can be played with Flash and go ahead and get you an energy the turn that it hits the battlefield and block a creature with its huge butt and survive. And you can get card advantage out of it over the course of the game, and it's only 2 mana. Just they really push the card for this limited environment, and you definitely want to play this if you're in blue. Not the most aggressive card ever, but it can stave off a bunch of damage. It can come down with Flash and block a guy they didn't expect to be blocked, and it can draw you cards. What else do you want? Skyship Plunderer is a pretty aggressively costed 2-power, 2-mana flyer, and that's good right there. But if you're playing with a bunch of stuff with +1/+1 counters, or energy counters for that matter, then the ability on it can get out of control pretty quickly. So good solid card there too. And then Reverse Engineer, if you've got just a couple of artifacts out, this card becomes incredible. But in sealed, you won't mind playing the 5 mana for it, to be honest. 5 mana draw 3 is pretty good in sealed, but just like Windkin, if you can get this down to 3 or 4 mana and draw 3 cards, it becomes extremely powerful. Now blue becomes a little softer at the common level. There are only about 3 blue commons that I want to talk about. There's Bastion Inventor, probably the best blue uncommon right here. This is a little hefty, 4/4 hexproof, but the cost is rather high. But good news, if you can get this down by just a couple of mana, it becomes pretty aggressively costed, and a 4/4 hexproof is absolutely great. A big body in sealed and with hexproof so they can't remove it easily, that is a dream. You want to play this, it's probably the best blue common. There's also Hinterland Drake and Aether Swooper. These are great in a blue-white skies deck, which is an archetype that I think will be very well represented in this format. Blue has great flyers, white has great flyers. Slap them together, you've always got a good deck in sealed. Remember that. I'll go over it a little bit later. Overall, blue looks like a decent support color this time around. You don't want to play a whole lot of blue, but that's okay because not a whole lot of the good blue cards have double blue in their casting costs other than Windkin Raiders. It's like they knew. And it's just solid at the common level, although the uncommons are quite good in blue. So, good support color. I'll give it a C+. On to black, and black this time around actually has a number of cards that I want to talk about. This has 6 uncommons and 6 commons that I want to at least touch on real quick, so let's do that. First of all, Foundry Hornet and Vengeful Rebel are both decent assassin kind of creatures, you know. They can come in, kill a guy, or at least weaken a guy, or maybe kill a guy that's weakened by combat. All of that's very good, and the Hornet even flies, and the Vengeful Rebel is at least aggressively costed, too. These are both premium uncommon creatures. There's also 2 pieces of removal in black that I think are pretty good at the uncommon level, one being Fatal Push and the other being Perilous Predicament. I don't really have to go into why Fatal Push is good. There's been enough hype over the card already. People are calling it the best card in Aether Revolt, and maybe, honestly, it's probably in the top 3. I mean, Fatal Push is just crazy, and once you get the Revolt on it, it becomes really insane, but the card is good enough without even triggering Revolt. Decent deal for removal. And then Perilous Predicament can be a 2-for-1. Your opponent gets a little bit of choice, but I like the idea of a 2-for-1. And the instant speed is not bad either, so be on the lookout for it. 5 mana is a little much, but taking 2 things off the board is crazy, and it's fairly likely your opponent will have an artifact. And there's 2 creatures that I want to point out right here. One being Gifted Aetherborn and the other one being Sly Requisitioner. Gifted Aetherborn is just an insane deal. I shouldn't have to tell you that. I mean, 2 abilities for 2 mana on a 2/3 is very, very good, even though you have to be fairly heavy black to play it on turn 2. But even if you're playing this on turn 3 or 4, it's not the worst card ever. I love small creatures with Death Touch in sealed. That's always good. But Sly Requisitioner, it looks like a lot at 5 mana for a 2/2, but this is pretty awesome because you can create an army over the course of a game. Any creature or any artifact or anything like that in sealed that can generate creatures is always something you want to take a look at. But black has just as many good commons that I want to go over real quick. First of all, Cruel Finality and Daring Demolition. These are both common level removal pieces. And Cruel Finality can deal with a surprising amount of things in this format. And extra effects are always good, so that's cool. Daring Demolition can take out darn near everything in this format, actually. Daring Demolition is just a great card. You know, it's common, 4 mana to destroy a creature. Seems like a lot, but you've got a little bit of choice on it. And honestly, in sealed, you'll never sneeze at 4 mana to take out a creature. It's always a good deal. There's also 3 creatures at the common level I want to talk about, those being Aether Poisoner, Defiant Salvager, and Fenhauler. I think Fenhauler is awesome because that ability looks pretty good to me in this format, and you can get it down to a pretty respectable 5 mana a lot of the time, it looks like. So Fenhauler looks like it's a decent card, at least to me. Try that thing out. And it's common, which is just crazy. You'll be able to get a couple of these very likely. Aether Poisoner is a good just 2 mana guy with Death Touch. You want to play those in black, and this one can possibly get you another creature, and it's not even that hard. So like that about it too. And finally, as far as the creatures here go, Defiant Salvager is good because it can get relatively big over the course of the game, even if you can only activate it as a sorcery. It's also good at triggering Revolt for you. That's awesome. And just at the common level, you can play a couple of these, and if one of them gets to 4 or 5/5 over the course of the game, then it's done pretty good work for you. And real quick to finish off black, I just want to talk about Resourceful Return for just a second. Again, I always like these recursive effects in Limited, and this one will draw you a card a lot of the time if you've built the deck the way they want you to build the deck in Aether Revolt Sealed. Overall, black is a very, very solid color in the sealed environment as far as I'm concerned. You don't have a whole lot of good stuff at the very, very top end of the curve, although that Mythic Demon is great if you can pull it off. But the rares aren't insane in black or anything. We've just got some good creatures at the lower to middle end of the curve, and we've got some really spectacular removal. And I'm going to go ahead and give black a tentative A. I'd like to give it a B+, but I think it's one of the strongest colors in Aether Revolt Sealed, so I'll go ahead and give it the A. It's red's time to shine, and I think that red is a decent color in this format. Let's go over it real quick. There are 4 uncommons and 4 commons that I want to talk about real quick. First of all, Scrapper Champion in the uncommons is the only creature I want to talk about as far as uncommons go. But Champion looks pretty good to me. We like 4 mana 3/3s in this format, so this can be a 4 mana 3/3 with double strike. That's great, and if you've got other ways of generating energy, it can always get a little bit bigger than that too. So just having what amounts to a 4 mana 3/3 double strike is crazy, and even a 4 mana 2/2 double strike isn't the worst thing in the world. So the ability to get bigger pushes this over the top and makes it the premier uncommon creature in red. But the other 3 uncommons I want to talk about are Invigorated Rampage, Hungry Flames, and Siege Modification. Invigorated Rampage, by the way, imagine you play it on a Scrapper Champion, give it +4/+0, then you've got a 7-power double striker. That seems awesome, but Rampage is good because it's a combat trick that can either have you spill over for a bunch of damage or maybe kill a couple of different creatures in combat. I just like it as a trick. Be on the lookout for it if you're in a kind of deck that wants it. And then the other 2, Hungry Flames, you want to play every time if you're in red because it deals damage to a creature at instant speed, and that's all you care about. You'll play that. Siege Modification is not the best thing in the world, and people are a little wary about playing things that you might get 2 for 1. You know, if you put siege modification on a creature or vehicle and they kill that creature or vehicle, you basically got 2 for 1. But modification is, I think, at least worth taking a look at. The +3/+0 bonus is no joke, and that the fact that you don't have to crew some vehicles in this format is absolutely nutso, because some of these vehicles cost 1 mana and are 7/11s. So if you somehow pull off the turn 1, you know, Dreadnought, it's a 7/11, and then, you know, turn 3 have a 10/11 out, yeah, I'd say it was worth playing siege modification. So keep your eyes open. As far as the commons in red, there are also 4 of those I want to look at. First of all, Destructive Tampering is quite good looking to me, especially as a sideboard card, because these are 2 very good red sealed sideboard tricks, both busting open stalemates on the one end and playing removal against artifacts against the other. You might actually play 1 copy of this in the main deck, depending on what your other removal options look like. I say that because it won't necessarily be dead. Even if you can't bust an artifact, you can bust open stalemates with it. So, decent card to me. The other 3 cards I want to talk about are Chandra's Revolution, Sweatworks Brawler, and Shock. Now, Shock is great. Chandra's Revolution, though, is again straight up removal, and you may be able to lock them out of playing something on their next turn. So you want to play every copy of this because it's super splashable too. So play 2 copies of those if you get them. Sweatworks Brawler is again splashable, and we again like 4 mana 3/3s in Seal, but this can get even lower than 4 mana, and it's got an ability tacked on, Menace, which is evasion, always a good ability in Sealed. So Sweatworks Brawler looks like a great red common to me. And then Shock, speaking of great red commons, again, it's removal, and you might think, oh, there's a lot of 3 toughness creatures in this format. Well, in just Aether Revolt, not even counting Kaladesh, just Aether Revolt, there are 48 different shockable creatures, and that doesn't count Thopters or Servos. There are a bunch of shockable creatures running around in this format. You'll want to play Shock. Overall, red has some strong pieces, but not a whole lot going on for it. And there are a couple of pieces I didn't talk about, like Wrangle looks okay, you know, as far as commons go. But for the most part, red doesn't impress me too much in this set. There are a lot of things that you'll end up wanting to at least splash. Chandra's Revolution is very splashable, so is Scrapper Champion, Hungry Flame, Sweatworks Brawler. So you've got a great support color here, but I don't know that I'd ever make it my main color unless I was having like a really good aggro deck brewing. But in Sealed, that's not going to happen too often. I'll stick with the C+. But here's the final color here. We're going to talk about green for just a second. There are 5 green uncommons and 5 green commons that I want to at least glance over for a second. And as far as the uncommons go, I'm going to start with Ridgescale Tusker. This is 5 mana for a 5/5. That's very good already in Sealed, but this can bring a bunch more power onto the battlefield. If you just played on curve and you played a 2-drop, a 3-drop, and a 4-drop, then suddenly this is bringing in 8 power, and in a stalemate, this can bring in even more power than that. So play Tusker when you get it. The other cards I want to talk about here are Monstrous Onslaught and Maulfist Revolutionary, and I've got a couple more too after that. Monstrous Onslaught, you probably don't want to play a bunch of copies of this or anything, but it is very, very good removal, and just like Tusker, it shines in a stalemate. In a stalemate, you'll be often able to remove 3-4 creatures on the other side of the battlefield, and Onslaught can just get crazy. So you want to play Monstrous Onslaught. It's fantastic removal at the uncommon level. As far as Maulfist Revolutionary goes, this is also just aggressively costed like Tusker. You know, 3 mana for a 3/3 with an ability is good right there. Not to mention, if you're playing with +1/+1 counters or energy counters, she gets crazy because she has an enters trigger and a dies trigger. The other 2 green uncommons I want to talk about are Narnam Renegade and Lifecraft Awakening. Narnam Renegade, just a 1 mana 1/2 death touch, is great in Sealed. If you can get the counter on it, that's fine, but just the fact that it's a 1 power, 1 mana death touch makes it a solid creature in Sealed by itself. Now, as far as the other card goes, Lifecraft Awakening, I think this is a great card for a number of reasons. First of all, it can be a combat trick at instant speed that can either take out a blocker, or if they, if you block one of their guys, it can blow apart the attacker. That's good too. Or if one of your artifact creatures swings in, suddenly you can just make it huge if it goes unblocked. Lots of good reasons for that. Or at the end of your opponent's turn, you can always make one of your inanimate artifacts into a big creature. I think this card has a lot of play, and there's actually a combo with one specific artifact rare that I'll get to a little bit later that makes this card very good as long as you get that rare. There are also 5 green commons that I want to briefly touch on here. The first of which is Prey Upon. Prey Upon's back. It's a reprint. It was also in Eldritch Moon and a couple other sets at this point. You'll always play this when you get it and you're in green. It's 1 green mana for decent removal. You want to play that. That's good every time. A couple other green commons I really like are Druid of the Cowl and Aether Stream Leopard. Leopard's good if you're building a more aggro-based deck. This is above curve, so Leopard's just okay. And Druid of the Cowl is good because it's just 2 mana for a 1/3. That's a decent stat line in Sealed. And it's going to fix your mana in some ways and give you a little bit of ramp too. I like a lot about Druid of the Cowl. Not the best card ever, but at least noteworthy in the Sealed environment. The last 2 green commons I want to talk about are Scrounging Bandar and Unbridled Growth. I think that both of these are quite good, and Unbridled Growth is good mana fixing, you know. This will allow you in some cases to play 3 colors if you want to very, very lightly splash a 3rd color, but it's also card draw for just 1 mana. Very, very desirable. But the fixing is what we're really after here. We don't have a lot of ways to do that in this Sealed environment. There aren't a whole lot of lands. As a matter of fact, there's only 1 land, and it's not even really a dual land unless you have an artifact. So, you know, not a whole lot of fixing in this format. Definitely want to play this if we get it and we want to splash a 3rd color. As far as Scrounging Bandar goes, it's a 2 mana 2/2 that can spread the love. Nothing wrong with that. We've got a slight +1/+1 counter theme that sort of runs through both this set and Kaladesh due to like Fabricate and Kaladesh. So this can help out in a number of different strategies, and I love that it's just a common. Scrounging Bandar is a little bit more utility than it appears. Although I don't think that green is one of the best colors for constructed play in the set, I do think that it's one of the better colors for Sealed. I think that green has a number of great uncommons and premium commons as well, and will serve as a good backbone color, you know. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and give green a B+. I think that black is probably the best color in this Sealed from what I can tell, but green and white are right behind it to me, and red and blue lag behind just a little bit, but both have great supportive cards. But if you're looking for, you know, a landmark color, of course it all depends on what you open. That's the caveat here. Always depends on what you open. But as far as the color that you want to play as your primary color, I think green, black, and white are all good choices. Let's finish off our color analysis with the artifacts here. This is obviously a block that's very, very focused on artifacts, so you want to play some artifacts because of all the synergies that are present. But which ones do you play? First of all, I want to point out that if you get any of these vehicles right here, and all of these are non-rare vehicles, if you get the rare or mythic vehicles, you want to play those too. But these are all uncommon or common. You want to play these. All of these vehicles are somewhat playable. 2 more things you want to look at in artifacts are implements and automatons. Now, implements are all non-creature artifacts that cost either 1 or 3 mana, and they'll have an effect if you sacrifice them. They'll all draw you a card, too, when they hit the graveyard. Drawing a card is good in Sealed, plus we want a cheap artifact so that we can either improvise off of it, or when we put it into the graveyard, when we sacrifice it, activate Revolt. There's a lot of reasons to play artifacts, and the implements are pretty good at doing all the different mechanical stuff that we want to do in this set. And the automatons are all good because they're mana sinks, and they're artifacts, and they're creatures. We want to play artifacts, we want to play creatures. Best way to do that is to play artifact creatures. And all of these are, again, mana sinks, which are very desirable in Sealed. As far as individual artifacts that I haven't named yet, 2 that I really like are Pacification Array and Treasure Keeper. Treasure Keeper just looks like a solid creature that'll get you more value when it dies. Replacement effects like that are always very good, or at least replacing yourself dying is good. And then Pacification Array looks fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Any deck can play it, and it might as well be straight up removal because it eliminates a creature at least from combat. So Pacification Array is a stellar uncommon. I would play it every time I got it, and I'd probably play as many copies as I got. As far as the rares and artifacts, I just want to touch on these real quick. 2 specifically. 1, Walking Ballista, and 2, Scrap Trawler. In a deck full of artifacts, Scrap Trawler is just obviously good. These recursive effects I've already talked about are fantastic and Sealed, so Scrap Trawler is amazing. Play it if you get it and you got the artifacts for it. Well, Walking Ballista is maybe one of the better cards for Sealed play in the entire set. Any deck can play it. It's an artifact, it's a creature, and it's removal. All of that is extremely good Plague Walking Ballista. And the combo I was talking about earlier, by the way, with Lifecraft Awakening is Walking Ballista. Imagine that. You can put a whole bunch of counters on it, add instant speed, and then remove those counters for damage. What's not to like about that? Hi, it's me again. You haven't seen my face in a while, and you won't see it for long. I'll be back for the end of the video, but I just wanted to say hi. Let's go over some archetypes for this format real quick. And archetypes are usually more of a thing in the draft environment when you have a little bit more control over what deck you're building. But archetypes are still pretty important in sealed, and I think that those same archetypes are present in this sealed environment. So let me go over those real quick. The first is an archetype that has existed in sealed play since the dawn of limited play, and that is blue-white skies. I brought this up earlier. You're going to play blue and white. In those colors, you're going to get access to some tempo out of blue. You're going to get some removal out of white, and both colors are going to give you big fat flyers in the air. In this set, you definitely got those. You know, you've got Aether Wind in blue. You've got Airdrop Aeronauts in white. You've got, also in blue, you've got Aether Swooper and Hinterland Drake. White has a 2/2 Wind Drake, basically just a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. So Blue-White Skies is looking pretty stocked, like Wizards want you to play it in sealed. So if you get the pieces for it, it's a strong deck. Blue-Black Artifacts is another archetype that people will be playing, and honestly, you can play XX Artifacts all day, you know, whether any colors artifacts, but I think blue and black are the two colors that are built most for it. You may also see a green-black counters deck going around, especially if they get a couple of different cards from Kaladesh, like Armorcraft Judge or Aetherborn Marauder. Both of those are decent Kaladesh pieces that can put people into green-black counters, and that deck looks good, especially considering green and black are probably my two favorite colors in the sealed environment. There's also a couple of different aggro decks in this format, even in sealed. You know, you'll see the black-red or especially the red-white vehicles deck quite often, you know, especially if a player hits a critical mass of vehicles and they get like the red-white uncommon. You will see red-white vehicles in this sealed environment. And then finally, green-white Revolt is another sort of aggro-y deck that's got some mid-range elements to it. But green and white are the two colors that probably do Revolt the best and have the best pieces with Revolt. So be looking out for that too. And that is all for our Aether Revolt pre-release guide. That was a lot of information in a fairly long video. Hope you're still with us because I really worked super hard on this one, and I hope that it helps you out with your pre-release, or at the very least, I hope you were entertained by it. If you enjoyed the video, hit me with a like. I would really appreciate it. Sub if you're new so you get more content like this, and hit the bell so that YouTube lets you know when I put more content out like this. You also want to sub and get those notifications because it won't be long. We're going to start putting out really, really good content, stuff that you want to see, like the top 10 or maybe even more, top 15 or 20 Aether Revolt cards, and very soon, next few days, deck techs are going to start coming down the pipeline. I like to go ahead and start doing deck techs soon because I've already been working on a lot of these decks for like 2 weeks. So deck techs coming very, very soon. Sub and hit the bell to get that content, and I'll see you guys later. I'm Dev from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards, and have a good pre-release.